Now, there's no doubt about it that by far one of the most anticipated Star Wars TV shows of this year is indeed the Ahsoka Tano series, which, by the way, Disney and Lucasfilm are aiming to drop this show on Disney Plus in or around June or July. They're still trying to find out exactly which month they really want to drop it at, but I digress. We already know that Jon and Dave are preparing to make some very big announcements at Celebration and D23 this year that's really going to expand the ever-evolving roadmap of the franchise. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. Now, the one thing about everything related to Disney Star Wars right now is that Bob Iger is completely shifting Lucasfilm as a company. We already know that Jon and Dave have big privileges right now at the company after they got those big time promotions, calling the shots on who's getting fired, who's getting hired, and replacing some of the Lucasfilm employees that are really not all that passionate or connected to George Lucas's vision. So we are getting a facelift over there at that company. And Jon and Dave really, cleaning up house at Lucasfilm. Something that fans, by the way, have been calling for to happen for years. Now, with that being said and all, Bob Iger had a couple of very interesting things to say the least here, about the sequel trilogy films and what Jon and Dave are currently crafting that's going to deeply impact these movies in several ways. So let's tap right into all of this. So, one thing that we do know about Jon and Dave is that they are working closely with George Lucas. They're working with other creators that they have been hiring. Peyton Reed, by the way, is one of them. Great director. He actually was involved in the first Ant-Man film. But when you look at it like this, we know that Jon and Dave are very busy people, working around the clock, all the time, trying to get things back on track. So, with Disney CEO Bob Iger, revealing more about the future of the franchise, both Jon and Dave are getting ready to make some powerful announcements at Celebration this year. In a recent interview, however, with Bob Iger, he went on to respond to the plans of resetting the Skywalker saga and the sequel trilogy itself as well. Bob Iger went on to state the following to the community. One thing that I have been discussing about Jon and Dave are quite extensive ambitions of theirs for how they are going to insert many kinds of old lore that was there, for how they are going to insert, of course, many of that type of lore, for how they're going to insert many kinds of old lore that was disregarded from us years ago. Fans like to call this legends. However, we have already created a system in order to reset the canon material in the sequel movies and what it means for the lore in those movies that will be shifted around based on our upcoming decisions for the new and upcoming changes that will be applied for Jon and Dave. We are fully aware that some of the choices we made with those films made fans very unhappy, and myself, Jon, and Dave have been going over strategies on how we can fix that by using certain tools in some of our upcoming shows that will alter many pieces of those movies that I really can't get into specifics right now. So let me just stop here for 1 second before he actually goes on to continue about all of this. Now, we already know that Ahsoka, just recently by the way, got renewed for a second season. It's official, it's on the paperwork, and it's happening. It's no longer called a limited series, it's now called Ahsoka Season 1 and a scripted series that's going to be moving forward. It's a multi-season show now, and so Ahsoka Season 2 is going to be very crucial in Jon and Dave's plans of resetting the canon in the sequel trilogy films, and exactly how you view those movies. A lot of canon is going to be either erased, or changed and altered, or retconned, whatever have you, different scenarios apply to different scenes, but they will be doing that in Ahsoka Season 2 mostly. They're going to tease a little bit about this plan in the first season, but not that much. The thing about all of this is that it involves the world between worlds. That's going to play a major role in all of these plans to change the face of the sequels, alright? We already know that they are going to be using archived footage from the sequels, and of course from the prequels even, to be used in the WBW for Ahsoka Season 2, to kind of give us callbacks to many different moments of those films. Now that brings us to what Jon and Dave are also planning to do. Now we already know that the realm of Mortis is going to be a big role in the second season of Ahsoka. That's already storyboarded as we speak. That's their major plan, is to bring that back into the equation as well. So looking forward to that. We also have the Netherworld of the Force coming into play for the Ahsoka Tano series. So you're getting all of these mysterious realms that are going to play a very large role in really shifting the timeline and how that all really works and how it involves the power of the wills, these godlike beings, you name it. Next thing up, alright, so he goes on to say, but what I can say is that what John and Dave have in store is quite the eye-popper, and it will be something that will advance this brand. It's in our best interest to only keep improving this franchise every single day. Now, separate from what Iger stated, this all alludes to big plans for using the WBW in both Ahsoka Season 1 and 2 to change the events of the sequels that will impact characters like Luke Skywalker, Rey, Palpatine, and more. Now, obviously, you have limitations of what you can do, alright? So John and Dave, they really can't just flip everything over, but what they are going to be doing is that many things that may have annoyed fans or upset a lot of fans out there, especially with the sequels, they're going to work on altering some of those moments. And we already know that John and Dave are adding a whole new layer and changing Luke Skywalker's death in a very big way. We'll talk about that at another time, but they are doing something related to that. Not that they're necessarily, going to do that in Ahsoka Season 1. They are planning to do that in Season 2. So there's a lot of great things coming out of this, alright? We have John and Dave really just trying to do their absolute best on improving the franchise more and more through and through. And though they may not be involved in Andor, that's really separate from what they are working on. But they are working on all of the mystical stuff, the mystical side of Star Wars mostly. You got Kathleen Kennedy having trouble with Skeleton Crew and the Acolyte. We talked about that many times. But John and Dave are really leading everything moving ahead, and it's really beginning to work for the fans. So I think that the WBW is something that you have to take great care with. You really can't get too carried away with it. You can't change too many things, otherwise it's going to feel a little, useless and just a little too overworked. But I think that John and Dave know what to do and what's too much and what's too little for using the WBW to change the events of the sequel trilogy films. Now, like I say, they also have plans to change certain aspects of the Skywalker saga at large, specific retcons being applied, in a good way though, to the prequel trilogy films by John and Dave. They're going to be making some very big improvements in there that's going to change how you look at some of those characters. But the sequel trilogy stuff, they're going to be using archive footage, like I say, throwing it in the world between worlds and changing those actual literal scenes around. They're going to visually show us certain scenes changing, is what they are planning. Not that it's just going to be read in canon. They're going to show you the canon actually changing up. So anyways, guys, fill me in below in the comments what you guys have to say about all of this, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
From night to moon, we hear them moans again.